I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
We're on the last one on this slide this morning, James chapter 5 and verse 12. I remember our question was, we're looking at the parallels between what James has said in his book compared to the teaching of Jesus. So James 5 and 12, I'll give that to you, Gord, please.
But above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into judgment.
Okay, in Matthew 5, 33 to 37, I'll read that. Again you have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, take no oath at all, neither by heaven, for it is the throne of God, nor by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you take an oath by your head, for you cannot make a single hair white or black. But make sure your statement is yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of the evil origin. So what do you see in those two verses, the comparison? What are we told there?
Keep your word.
Gord?
Keep your word.
Right. And add to that.
Well, I mean, you don't say yes, you're going to do something and not do it just for the sake of pleasing somebody. If you can't do it, you say, sorry, you can't do it.
Right.
But if you do make that commitment, you should be expected to keep it.
Right. Okay. Well, James here, let's remember, he's left behind his thoughts now of instructions on trials and patience, and he's brought up this topic of vows. And if you recall, the Old Testament, the Old Law stated that the Israelites were forbidden to swear falsely. Okay, Leviticus 19 and 12 and Deuteronomy 23 and 23, both those passages state that Israelites were not to swear falsely. But by this time, in James's time, by this point in time, they had introduced a number of oaths in their common conversation. Okay, and we hear that too today, don't we? And they considered them, though, not to be binding. That was their theory. They verbally swore, okay, but in their hearts, they never had any intention of keeping it. And James is reminding them here that shouldn't be so. And we need to be careful of that as Christians.
But you're making like foolish statements, basically, I'd rather die than to do this, kind of thing. But that's an oath, really.
Right.
We got to be careful of our speech.
Yeah. Jeff?
One of the problems with oaths, not often talked about, is that we don't have control over the future in the first place. So when we make an oath, I swear this will be done or that will be done, I cannot actually be certain something will be done because I do not know what the future holds. So that oath is really useless coming from me because I have no control over the future. When I say yes to something, it should simply be yes if I'm simply capable of it. If I'm incapable, then it's understandable.
Right.
I got hit by a car or something. I said a yes, I was coming, but I was in an accident. Obviously, I can't make it because of the accident. So my answer should be simply yes, no, no. to take oaths about something in the future. It reminds me in the book of Acts, there were those who wanted to kill Paul. They actually swore an oath that they would neither eat nor drink
Right.
until they had killed Paul. Well,
Right.
they never did kill him.
No.
So I wonder what happened to their foolish oath that they would kill Paul. They wouldn't eat and drink before they killed him. My guess is they ended up having to eat and drink at some point in time. They
Right.
weren't capable of killing him.
Right.
A foolish
Exactly.
oath.
Yeah.
They had no control over what would happen.
That's true. And they never really, as you say, fulfilled it.
No.
We're not told, but they wouldn't have been able to. They never did kill him, so that means they had to have eaten at some point. Carla?
And we ought to say the Lord willing, as James said too. The Lord, if the Lord wills, or the Lord willing, he said so.
Right.
You can't even make your hair gray, or you can't do. You have no control really. I'm paraphrasing, but God willing, even you ask people to do something, God willing, yes, I will do it, but God willing, you never know.
Right.
Then but Edward just said, see you tomorrow. I said, God willing. Oh, don't say that. You're going to, if you of all people wouldn't show up, nobody else will. Meaning because I'm a Christian and all of that. So he
Right.
wouldn't spare them. If he doesn't spare me, I said, God willing. I don't know if I'll be here, but God willing.
Yeah.
So,
And that's not, when we say that, we're not making a vow or an oath. We're leaving it in God's hands,
yeah.
the Lord willing. We're not saying, I will do this, and by swearing an oath, we're using God as an approval. God doesn't want us to do that. Like a vow and an oath, they're similar because they involve important promises. Okay, that's why we do it. And like if I make a promise to Gord and then I use something else, like using God, then why do I need to even do that anyways? Why is not my word good enough? And I thought really our word should be the foundation for someone's trust. Just our yes and our no. It's sufficient. We don't need to accompany with it an oath or an appeal to God, do we? And also, though, at this time, James, they were using the Lord falsely with their oaths. And so he is telling them that, no, this is not a Christian attitude. And also there's many that use this verse for oaths and vows in a courtroom, in a judicial system. Well, first of all, James isn't speaking of that anyways. And there's many opinions on that. And there's, if you don't want to make that vow or that oath in the courtroom, our courts now allow us to affirm our word under the penalties of perjury instead. They allow that. So to me, it's never really been, it's not a big thing. If the government or the courts ask me to do that, well, that's fine. That means nothing to me. If I don't want to, well, that's fine. Make your oath in another manner, But as for God, as for making promises and backing them up with God's approval, then no, we're not to do that. And furthermore, at James's time, a lot of the religious leaders, they were using that as a form to have us trust them when they never intended on keeping it anyway. So we move on then and to our content section. And I'm going to try and keep us moving through here because the last couple questions, a lot of repeat, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we can finish it today. But according to James, okay, in James 1, verse 13 to 18, how does sin develop through temptation? And why would it be wrong to blame God under such circumstances? I'll just go to James chapter 1. James 1. And 13 to 18. I've been scanning over our readings so we don't... we'll read this then, and on my final question, we won't bother. We'll know what the passages is saying. So verses 13 to 18, Carl, I'll get you to, if you want to read 2, and then Jeff, or Carl, you read 3, and Jeff, you read 3 then.
Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself does not tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death.
Okay.
Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creatures.
Okay. Well, so far in our study, James has described external trials, okay, that come upon us. Now he is introducing the inner trials, the temptations that involve sin. And temptations are different than trials. Trials are just a part of living, of our living experience. We all experience trials, sometimes daily, different trials, but temptations come from within. And I guess the first thing then we'll just ask, how does sin develop through that? I picked one example I thought of. How?
James put the responsibility on the individual.
Right.
He says in 14, each one is tempted when he is drawn away.
Right.
By his own desires and enticed.
Right.
He puts the responsibility squarely where it belongs.
Right. Right. And that takes care of the second thought in Dave's question.
Right.
We can't blame God. I thought of 1 John 1 and 5. We don't even need to go there because James has told us. And I thought of Eve as a perfect example. The first was Satan planted thoughts in her mind. Okay? And he used the circumstances at the time to help him. Because remember, Eve was standing before the tree, wasn't she? She was seeing the tree. And so Satan is using that to influence her. And she saw and then desired it. Because she's seeing it. Satan is feeding her with these thoughts. And then she acted, which was Jeff's point. She acted, and then thus she sinned because she violated God's will. And that is the process. And we cannot blame God for our desires, as we said. And the verse 17 simply The Greek word for good means beneficial or necessary. Okay, so not thinking of sin for a moment, but maybe all the things we need in life, God has given us everything that's beneficial and necessary. And then perfect, which means complete or whole, God has supplied, now I think of the temptations, God has supplied all that we need to overcome temptation, whether internal or external. And I thought of what examples can we give for God supplying us with everything that we need to overcome temptation.
Well, we're told that He will create an escape.
Okay, yeah. He'll give us an escape. That's one. I didn't have that. What else do you think?
You have every spiritual blessing in Jesus Christ. So
Right.
through those blessings is how we overcome.
Right. I had Christ down. And so, yes, thinking of what Christ has done. What else goes along with Gord's thought?
Well, as far as Eve is concerned, she was tempted, but she knew, we all know what is right and wrong. God had told them, do not eat of that tree. When you eat it, you're going to die. So I'm sure it would strike a nerve to know that God said not to.
Right.
And then you can't blame God and say, well, the devil tempted me. Like in her case, and so on. So we know what is right from wrong. When we are tempted, we can't say that God is tempting us.
Right.
He established already what is righteousness and unrighteousness, and it's up to us to choose those two.
Right. You're aiming at what I was looking for. He spoke with Eve and told her. Tammy?
I came in part way, so I'm not sure if this was already said, but we know that we won't be tempted beyond what we can bear.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't have that down. What I was after with Kyle's thought was His Word. He's given us, we have the Word. He spoke with Eve, told Eve what to do, Adam and Eve, what to do, what not to do. He hasn't left us in a mystery, understanding what He wants. He's given us His Word. And also I thought of the church. Also, He's given us all things that we need. He's supplied us with all we need to overcome temptation. And really the church is one too, like one another. We can help each other.
Well, God's point too is He will find a way of escape. Yeah, but when He doesn't find a way, when we do not use that escape to find ways and means to overcome it, then when we sin, we'll say, oh, well, He didn't find a way, or maybe I didn't see the way, and we blame God for that.
Yes.
Or He tempted me, and He knows how I am. He knows the kind of person I am. And I didn't find this way of escape. But maybe you didn't look enough. You have to know where you're going to be tempted and get yourself out of there fast as possible. You don't be left alone in a car with a stranger, just that rooms, wherever. You know
Right.
You know you, and you have to act accordingly.
Right.
I know how weak I am. Everyone knows their weaknesses and faults.
Yeah.
So then you can't blame God.
Which brings a thought to my mind. He can give us in a way of escape. And if we're not careful, if we keep digging, trying to find a way to fulfill the lusts that we're involved with, we keep digging to try and find a way around. God's already given us an escape, in different manners. But we can ignore that escape. And then we can't blame God then. We can't say, well, I prayed for an escape, you haven't sent me one. Well, it's because I wasn't looking, and I wasn't really wanting that escape, is another thought. And so then we move along to our next section, faith and works. And we're asked here, what kind of works are under discussion in the Epistle of James? And why is it true that faith without works is dead? I thought here maybe to open up our thoughts. Faith is more than an intellectual belief in God. If we look at James 2, and I guess 14 to 26, James 2, 14 to... We've read this, I think, already, so maybe if we just kind of scan over it, because it comes up in question 8 again. So just to maybe help us to get thinking here, an intellectual belief in God is not faith, is it? If the belief in God doesn't lead us to a holy life or to righteousness and mercy, is that a saving faith? Right. Jeff shook his head. No. And verse 14 explains to us that we're talking here about spiritual salvation, okay, which involves spiritual works. And how do we prove our faith? How do we prove our faith?
By action.
Right, Kala, action. And if we don't do that, then it can't save us, can it? By our actions, we can now be saved. And that may come as a surprise to most people. That is contrary to how their thinking is. But James sums up a saving faith. And if it doesn't involve works, then it's dead in itself, isn't it? And a dead faith is an inactive faith. How many times have we heard preachers and teachers use the doctor analogy? If you have a disease that's killing you and they have a cure and they tell you and you don't act on it, then that means what? You don't have any faith in the doctor, in his word, do you? And if you do have a trust in the doctor, then you act on it.
Well, it's like the Jehovah's Witness. They don't believe in blood transfusion. And a lot of times, there is a need for blood transfusion, but that faith they have, oh no, that blood is not, we're not supposed to have blood. First of all, you don't even know the scriptures. I think Deuteronomy 17 is, the blood is life. Blood is life,
Right.
and it saves. It's supposed to save. So they're saying, oh no, we're not supposed to have blood, or whatever. So you have that faith, and you do not, just because you believe that, and you don't go ahead with what the doctors are recommending, you're going to die, or your child is going to die. So faith without works is dead, and then faith, our action, basically is to win people and influence them. We have the faith to know what is right and wrong. But if a brother comes to you and destitute and in need and wants something, and you, oh my dear brother, in peace and God, may the Lord be with you, you have done nothing, absolutely nothing.
Right.
You could preach whatever you want to say, and you didn't do an act. It's in vain.
Right, exactly. I'll skip us here, and that'll kind of join in these two thoughts. But thinking of faith at Unime?
Yeah, the previous slide is like a captain, that captain in the Bible, whose child was very ill, and he did all he could So when he heard that Jesus was around, he went to Jesus and said, "Speak but the word. If you speak the word, you don't need to come to my house. Just speak the word and my child will make it." And Jesus said, "He has never seen such a faith. Never seen such a faith." You know, since he started his ministry. So he had faith. He went out, he took action by going out to see Jesus, look for Jesus.
Right.
And when he got home, his child was.
Yeah. That's a good example because it joins together action and his heart. Like he knew Jesus could heal him even before, by the fact that he said, "You don't even have to come to my house." He knew that. Gordon.
It's like the woman with the constant flow. She thought just to touch his garment.
Right.
He said, "What? Your faith has healed you."
Right. Those are all good examples showing the inner works of the heart. But how, if you look at James 2 and verse 19, James uses the demons here as an example. And what can we glean from that verse as far as instruction for us? What can we glean from that?
The demons.
Did they believe it?
They know God exists. They're there. How much more should we fear God with reverence?
Right. That's right, Lord. But the lessons from them is that, they not only believed in God, they knew He existed, but they also shuddered, didn't they? They were also deadly afraid of Him. But what did that do for them?
Their belief was useless.
The which, Chef?
Their belief was useless.
Yeah.
Nothing for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of look at that like they didn't fear Him enough to repent.
The which, Gord?
I look at it, they didn't fear Him enough to repent.
Well,
They stayed in their same state.
yeah. It did no good for their salvation, did it? Jeff?
In that previous question, David said David had asked what these works are that's being referred to in chapter 2. What kind of works are these? So we realize as we're looking through that these are what we would say works of faith. That's the difference.
Right.
The Bible makes a distinction between the works of men, our own works, things that we decide or design by our own thought and mind that we are going to do such and such a thing. The world is full of people who do works supposedly in the name of God that God never told them. The works of faith are works that are instructed by God. Just like we read it of Abraham.
Yes.
In verse 21.
Yeah, that's where we're going next.
Right.
Yeah. But go on.
Okay, Abraham 21, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar? Well, who decided that he should put his son Isaac on the altar? Did Abraham decide that?
Yeah.
God
Right.
told him to do that, so thus it was a work of faith, and God told him to do that.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. Do you have your hand up, James? Oh, okay. Yeah, that was, thank you for that thought, Jeff, because that was a question I was going to ask. Whose idea was it to offer Isaac? We talk about faith and works, and those that try to get around the topic of faith is good enough. We don't need works. Abraham is the perfect example. God asked him to offer up Isaac, and Abraham believed that God would raise Isaac, but if he hadn't have put Isaac on the altar, what would that have been telling God? It would have been telling God, no, I don't really have faith in you. I'm not sure you're going to raise my son. So
even Isaac had even a greater faith.
The which, yes,
Isaac,
yes.
He's the one that was going to be sacrificed, and it's like God will provide.
Right. That's right, Gord. Yeah. We've talked about Isaac and his faith, his trust not only in God, but his father. And Rahab then. Why might James have chosen Rahab as his example? You know, to the readers of James' day, a harlot was really ranked with tax collectors. They were pretty much the lowest of society, and yet James uses her as an example. And why do you think, Jeff?
She wasn't even an Israelite.
Right. There's one good point too. Yeah. And yet she acted with her faith in God. And I think that it might have just been that this Canaanite's faith, because she wasn't an Israelite, was justified the same way as Abraham's was, wasn't it? For those that say we don't need works, you know, faith is good enough, my private faith. But she demonstrated that act of faith has no bounds. It can go on and on. And James uses her. And anyone is acceptable to God if he has shown obedient faith. And we see that with these two examples. Any other thoughts on that one? Well, James.
You know, if you believe a promise, because it's based upon a promise, you have to believe what God said to you. You know, because Abraham believed that he would get the promised land. Our promise is eternal life in Christ. That's our promise.
Right.
Are you believe? Can your belief take you there? That's faith. Having that faith, but doing the work that you need to do is necessary. You know, how are you going to live your faith? By just believing? I believe that you are going to give me $1,000, but I have to come to your house to get it.
Right.
Could I stay at my house and receive that $1,000? You know, so you have to do some work.
Right.
You know, it's necessary. That's what James is teaching us. We have to do something to get what we believe in.
Yeah, exactly. There's countless examples, isn't there, of faith and works. And those that say that all you need is faith, I mean, they're outnumbered with passages that remind us that no, in every biblical character there is recorded in the Bible, always active.
And the popular one is just believe. All you need to do is to have faith in God and believe. You could touch the TV, you could do this, you could do that. So nothing else.
Right.
What about baptism? What about hearing the word, believing, confessing, being baptized?
Yeah. It's a smoke screen, isn't it, to have it stop. Unime?
Still on Abraham. Remember in the book of Numbers, Genesis chapter 15?
Yeah.
Genesis 15, when Abraham saw the vision, and God said, I'm going to give you a reward. And then Abraham asked God, then what would your reward do to me when I don't have a child? Eliezer of Damascus will inherit my wealth. And God said, no. Eliezer of Damascus will not inherit your wealth. So God took him out, showed him the stars in the skies, and said, if you're able to number the stars, then you'll be able to number your generation. So Abraham believed, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. So he believed and it pleased God. It was accounted to him for righteousness. So when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, he knew how the process was. That was why he did not, he still believed that even if Isaac died, that God was able to raise him from death.
Right. And by those actions, we please God, don't we? And Abraham had wrote down a couple passages, 2 Chronicles 20:7 and Isaiah 41:8. Both say that Abraham created a friendship with God. And we're told the same thing, Jesus said in John 15 and 14. And so we understand then by our actions is how we're creating a relationship between the Father and Christ and us. And it's only through our actions. It's not just by, as we read with the demons, it's just not through our belief. God's not satisfied with that. So we'll move along, and we come to pure and undefiled religion. And how does James, Unime, I'll give you that passage, it's only 2 verses. James 1 and verses 26 and 27.
If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world.
Okay, thank you. So how, I guess maybe one thought we could bring out first off here is, who is this speaking to?
Christians,
It's individuals or the church?
individuals.
Right, Kala, right. We make that point right off the bat. That is individual. That's each of us. And so we're asked, how does he describe pure and undefiled religion in our own words? Is it practical religion? Could we say that? Is it not our actions? Day-to-day life, we can say that. Can we not say when we live according to God's word, is our religion then not pure and undefiled? If we live according to his word. And religion, the word here means worship. And that which consists of ceremonies is one thought there. But putting that together, we come to this, that things we do externally, okay, are natural products of our internal love for God and His Word. That's kind of how I summed that up. If our religion is to be pleasing to God, then it must be practical. It kind of goes along with the thoughts of faith and works, doesn't it? It's a practical, a true test of our religion then, according to these verses then, is to what? What are some of the examples that James gives us? Jeff?
The first thing is things that we should not do.
Right.
James points out things that we should bridle our tongue. One of those things. In other words, there's things we need to control.
Right.
Things we should not be doing.
Right.
The first thing you notice is, as Christians living by faith, things that we should not be doing.
Right. So then move on now, and what are the things that we need to?
Can you just provide some examples of when it said tithe rain on their tongues? So in our daily lives, is referring to gossiping. What else would be when it said tithe or rain your tongue? Like a word, like
Right.
how does apply to our days?
Okay.
Can you provide some examples of it?
Yeah. That's I see where you're
Such as,
heading.
like using bad language would be not bridling your tongue. Gossip would be not bridling your tongue.
Judgment would be there.
Which,
Judgment?
judging an unrighteous judgment would also be, we are to judge a righteous judgment, but judging by appearance or unrighteous judgment, again, not right.
Right.
Could be anything negative that you can do to another person.
To another person?
Yeah, like anything negative you can say about anyone.
Yes. Anything that would be wrong to another person, but also wrong in the sight of God too.
Right.
Not
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. But what is he moving on then to verse 27? What are some of the things there that he is telling us that we should do?
Tell us that we should visit the orphans,
Right.
you know, and widows, and keep ourselves unspotted from the world. But as Christ was saying, you know, the poor will always be among us.
Right.
You know, we have to be able to accept the poor. You know, take care of the poor. They're gonna be among us.
Right. It's showing a personal interest, isn't it, in the needs of others, especially orphans and those that are widows.
He said orphans and widows. Is specifically to our church, to community, or it can be anyone?
Good point. Good point. I was hoping we'd maybe get through this. This is individual. This is who James is speaking to here. You and I. He's not speaking to the collective arrangement of the church. That isn't the church's response. It's not a congregational responsibility, is what James is saying here. God's given us the pattern to help the needy, and it's through us. Gordon, or Colin, and then Gordon.
So it's really when the opportunity presents itself.
Right.
You can't say, well, go to the church will take care of that. It's speaking to Christians. It's speaking to you. Visiting the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. When you see the need, when the opportunity presents itself, it's just like the Good Samaritan. The Levite passed by, the priest passed by, but this Samaritan, who was not a Jew, did what he had to do.
Right. Exactly. Gordon?
Well, we're given the command, do good to all men, especially those in the household of faith. So
Yeah.
all is inclusive. It's not picking and choosing.
Right.
We do what's within our ability. We can't go feed the world, but yet, you know, if we see somebody that's just lost their parents, well, maybe we have opportunity to take them in and help them until something better is done.
Right.
We do what we can do with what we have.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
James, I'll give you the last. Did you have a thought, or you just waved your arm?
No, I say this kind of hard to hear.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. That's all. Several
Yeah.
words.
Okay.
From the context, this one is talking about the hearing the word and doing the word. So from the context, we can know some people most just hearing the word and the faith, not doing the word. So this defined, not pure religious. So we should hear the word and doing what we should do, and don't do what we should not do.
Right.
God asks us to do. So we should do what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's a pure religion according to God's will.
Right.
You need.
That's right.
God's righteousness.
Right, Henry. And a part of that hearing the word is further down by our actions of being compassionate and helping others.
I'm not ashamed to hold my Lord, nor to defend